Hello, good evening. I suppose now is as good a time as any to get started. Hello, is me, is the Ben Repaints, and I am gonna get started, I suppose. Is Tuesday the 24th. This month is just flying by, and I'm sleepy. Had a pretty typical week, I suppose, but that's not what we're here for, are we? Today, I am going to continue painting Horus Ascended. I've been working on him on and off over the weekend, and so he's a little bit further along than when we last saw each other. And so, what I'm going to do is kind of work on a lot of the details, because most of him has been painted, at least in terms of the main body, and I'd like to get that stuff all fleshed out and done before I move on to anything else. So let's go ahead and get rid of the starting soon image. Starting soon. Turn on the palette camera so you can see what colors I'm starting with. Kind of working on making some of the browns pop a little more. Potentially getting into some non-metallic metals for the golds. Let's go back to here. Of course, right now we don't have anything up screen yet, but that will change shortly. So this is what I'm working with right now. This is Mr. Horus. This is what he looks like and where he is. And you can see I've got a lot more done on him. He's got a lot more character going on in terms of some of the metallic bits on him. He's got a lot more character going on with some of his the eyes. But right now, looking at him, especially now that I'm under better light, I'm seeing a lot of room for improvement. He is nowhere near done. So one of the first things I want to do is just continue working on getting his blends just right. Some of the colors. So the first thing I noticed when I was looking at him was that this skull right here looks a little sloppy. So I'm probably going to go ahead and redo that really quickly before I move on, because I need to start getting into some kind of rhythm with this model. So we're just going to repaint that over with a decent looking dark brown, and then layer our way back up to the skull color that I had going on. And hopefully it'll look a little better than it did. But yeah, this guy has been quite a challenge to paint just because of the sheer scope of painting Horus and wanting to do it right, you know what I mean? He's not quite where I want him to look, and in a lot of ways I feel like he still looks very rough. So I'm probably going to spend a lot of time going over him with some more detail and make some of the spots that I feel look a little rough look a lot cleaner. Eventually, I'm going to go ahead and do that face of his, which I think is going to be a very fun challenge, because I was originally going to airbrush the area behind his head and kind of, you know, build up to a glow and then put the head in. But then I saw Sergio Calvo, who is, you know, in his own league in terms of being a painter, just go ahead and paint the entire thing as one model that's already been glued together, and it gave me the confidence to try. So something that is going to happen is I'm going to go ahead and give that a shot. I'm already halfway there. I've got the model put together and painted for the most part, and I'm kind of following what he did, which was paint the entire thing red and then work my way back to painting him to more of a flesh tone. I'm also noticing that I got a little bead of something right here that's... okay, good, it just fell off. Looks like a little bead of paint, but no clue. So right now, I'm just kind of working my way back into this with kind of like a warm-up section by painting some of the accessories on him. Which of course don't have to look perfect, but I don't want them to look bad. So I'm going back and giving this one a touch-up so I can kind of get my skills back in order. Because right now everything feels kind of rough and raw in terms of what I'm capable of. Now, I did end up painting a lot of him at a dining room table with a not great light, so hopefully I can kind of ease back into this and really get some of those better blends and better colors painted onto him. Because yeah, looking at him under this much better studio light versus the portable one that I was carrying around with me, he's definitely got some roughness about him that I'm not going to say I'm super fond of right now. But that's okay. What do I keep touching that is so wet over here? Must have gotten more liquid in the palette, or water on the palette, than I thought I did. What is... Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. I understand. My mistake. Sorry, I hydrated the palette paper on the wet palette. And every time I kind of... Hey, Snowtwig, how's it going? Every time I kind of lean my hand against the palette, it definitely oozes a little bit of the water back out onto the bottom of my hand, and it keeps getting me because it's cold. But now that I figured that out, I'm good to go. So yeah, I'm just kind of working on him. I'm a lot further with him than I was, I think, than the last time you saw him. But there's still a lot of spots on him that are real rough that I kind of want to either smooth out or tone back down, or just in general make him look better. So right now, I'm kind of easing my way back into the project with the little skulls on his belt, because I didn't like how sloppy some of the paint job looked. So now I'm trying to create a more gradual transition of color from the dark brown closer to his belt out to the highlights where the skull would actually be kind of glinting some light off of it. Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm really trying to make this like one of the best things I've ever painted. And to do so, I need to be a little bit more technically proficient than I'm showing right now. So, there's going to be a lot of kind of refinagling to make parts of him look better than he already does. But yeah, I want this model to be, just singularly impressive, if you know what I mean. How's your day been going? How are you doing? I don't feel like I asked that question enough, because I kind of get absorbed in what I'm doing. But yeah, like right now, I didn't like how chalky that skull turned out and how odd the light looked on it, so I'm going back over it entirely and repainting the entire thing. And hopefully that will lead to a much better looking, better lit skull on his head, or on his belt, than the chalky white blob that he had. Off of that. And what I really should be doing is, I've been following a painter on YouTube named Philon Miniatures, and I think I've talked about him a decent amount. But his light placement and his like highlighting is sublime, at least to me. Got hooked in a Deadlock today and played too much. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not sure what Deadlock is. I feel like I've heard of it, but I don't recognize it. So what is Deadlock? But yeah, Philon is really good at what he does, and part of what he does is do expert level like light source on his minis. And so I'm going to try and emulate some more of that by being more judicious with my highlights. Which is kind of what I'm working on right now. Getting slightly better looking transitions from light to dark and dark to light. A third person MOBA? Oh, neat. Those have still been incredibly popular, which I find interesting because it's kind of like, you know, every 5 or 10 years a new hotness comes out, and it becomes like the default way games need to be made if they want to make any money. And MOBAs were big for a while, and I don't think they really are anymore, I guess. But then there's like, I don't know what they call them, the oh my goodness, the Fortnite style games. I have no clue. I've been so out of the video gaming landscape for so long that I'm kind of lost nowadays. But I'm assuming, I always forget, MOBAs are the ones that are like League of Legends, right? Or am I thinking of something else? Because the terminology has begun to escape me as I've stopped playing games. But those are like isometric top-downs. and I never really got into them because I was really bad at them when they were still just like custom map settings maps on Warcraft 3 way back in the early 2000s. So I just never really got into those style of games. That, and to be honest, I didn't have enough friends to actually play them with, and I didn't want to play with strangers because they were much better at things like Defense of the Ancients than I was. So, yeah, how does this, what specifically is, Deadlock? If you ended up playing it for too long, that means it's good. Or at the very least addictive, and so I'm curious. That one needs to get it too. All of these are getting repainted. Hopefully they'll all look a whole lot better when I'm done with them. But yeah, I think with the skulls, I probably did these in a rush as I was trying to finish up before I stopped painting him for an evening and was like, okay, he's done. And now that I'm looking at it, it's like, nah, he's not done. He's got more work that needs to be done to him. And in his case, you know, given what he's supposed to represent and who he is, I feel like I owe it to him to do the best dang job I can. So, as few cut corners as possible. Like, I know for a fact I'm going to spend a lot of time on his face. Because, honestly, one of my least favorite things about the original Horus Primarch model is that he looks so nonplussed. I think the way that they designed, just got it today, I'm still figuring that out. Fair enough. One of the things that the original Horus model had that I wasn't very fond of was he had a very odd, like, it was supposed to be stoic and stern and inspiring expression, I guess, but he always just kind of looked glum. He always just kind of had this weird neutral expression, and so I was never too fond of it. And I feel like this Horus does a much better job of looking determined and you know, there's a lot of emotion in that face. So I gotta make sure I do a good job on this lad. The game that I've been trying to play more of is Space Marine 2, which is a freaking fantastic game for what it is. And I'm waiting for some friends to get it as well, so that we can play together. And I'm probably going to end up doing a lot of... I'm probably going to end up streaming it sometime, potentially this week, I don't know, with those friends. Kind of like I did with Space Marine 1. But, now that I've kind of gotten to really sit down and play the game for a couple of hours, I gotta say I'm impressed. Given that, even though it is technically a sequel, yeah, it's really good. It's not perfect. It's not game of the year. It's not, you know, the best action game I've ever played. It's definitely raw in some areas. The storyline is kind of meh and oddly inconsistent. But to be completely honest, it does what it sets out to do, which is introduce people to the Imperium, Space Marines, and it gives some very delicious combat. I'm really impressed with what they've managed to do, because I remember playing the first Space Marine and thinking, this is a super cool game, I like this game, but everything feels kind of limited. Like, once you've played with every weapon and done what you needed to do with it, you got it. You understand the game. With Space Marine 2, I feel like there's a deeper level to the combat in ways that feel good, you know? Yeah, I honestly think it's a better game than the first on sheer gameplay. I really, really like Space Marine 2. They succeeded in all the places they needed to succeed, and they didn't fail in all the places that could have broken the game, if that makes sense. Like I said, the storyline it's fine. It's not super focused in like a way that makes sense, but it is a very tightly focused storyline. It's something I didn't even think about, but one thing that was brought up as a complaint for it is that you start the game fighting Tyranids, and they are a system-threatening menace, right? They are consuming the entirety of the system, and they're a big problem for the first half of the campaign. And everything is around trying to do things to get people and MacGuffins to safety before the Tyranids get there. And then about halfway through a mission, you find out that Chaos is there, because of course they are. And then suddenly it switches to Chaos, and you never see the Tyranids again. They're never talked about again. They're never really mentioned again. They're no longer an issue that needs to be dealt with, and you go to fighting nothing but Chaos. And So that just feels weird narratively because the Tyranids are still consuming multiple planets in the system. So, and that's just kind of odd that suddenly they're not a big enough threat for you to have to deal with anymore. But if you really don't care about having a tight story, then that's really unimportant. And one of the things that I noticed about it was that the game really seemed to not worry too much about creating a grand narrative and more about creating really cool Warhammer scenes. And given that it's not a role-playing game, that wasn't something I thought too hard on. You know what I mean? There are some really great, really cool scenes that feel like you're in the dioramas and the key art and promotional art that you see of Warhammer, where it's like huge walls of enemy humanity clashing with whoever the central character is supposed to be. And I think they nailed that aesthetic perfectly, because especially playing as a Space Marine, you do really feel like you're right in the middle of one of those promo pictures. And it's been on social media a lot, but there's very specifically like a last stand moment where Titus grabs a banner and he's with like a small squad of Space Marines, and his whole thing is hold the line. And so he plants the banner with one hand that you're holding on to, and he's just kind of shooting away with his bolt pistol with the other hand, alongside a small group of Space Marines that are kind of beneath, like lower than him and next to him. And it really feels like one of those paintings you see of Space Marine propaganda. And it looks fantastic, and it feels awesome. And of course, the actual combat feels really good too. I've played a couple of the cooperative missions; those are a lot of fun. I'm only about halfway through the story, I'll say. And the only issue I have with it, other than that it's a little weirdly inconsistent, is that your allies are really stupid. So if you're playing on a higher difficulty, you're going to have a hard time. They aren't very good at what they do. And especially because the learning curve of the game is a little bit rough, unless you're a whole lot better at them than I am, which is very possible. One of the biggest things I had was just trying to learn the parry and the dodge system, so I was an adequate enough player. And there's one mission in particular that really pissed me off because it was very difficult, at least for me, until I finally figured it out. You have to, like, keep Tyranids off of different spires of a tower so that it can get a message out. And you're the only one that'll actually shoot at the Tyranids as they're swarming parts of the tower. Your allies, unless they're played by, people, will just kind of stand there and shoot at the little grunts that are basically inconsequential, but they won't shoot enough to keep the grunts off of you. And so it just ends up being an overall frustrating experience because you end up getting hit and killed a lot by them. And especially if you're like me and you're kind of really immersed in the game, and it's no longer like I'm playing video game, but more like I've got to keep these things off the tower. It's really easy to run out of ammo. But of course, like I said, I'm not super great at video game, so that was probably just a skill issue. You know what I mean? But yeah, like I said, it's a really good game. It apparently has sold tremendously well, far better than many other games that the creative director has worked on, and he worked with id Entertainment, so he helped make like the Doom games, including the new ones. He helped make what was it, Rage, and a bunch of other ones that are pretty successful. He said that they had like half the budget for this game that they did for Doom Eternal, and the game has sold better than any game that he's ever worked on. So I would, if you can, I would definitely get the game. If you're any kind of fan of Space Marines or of Warhammer, it's worth playing. You know what I mean? And I think that that's a very impressive thing to do, because I feel like as good as the first Space Marine game is, it kind of grew in legend the longer it was out. Because I remember playing it before I knew much about Warhammer, and it's a serviceable game. There's like nothing terribly wrong with it or anything, but I wouldn't have called it great. Like, it would have just been, yeah, this game's really fine. This game's good. It's fine for what it's trying to do. But it seems like if you talk to anyone who's into Warhammer, um, Space Marine 1 was one of their magnum opuses alongside Dawn of War. And I think that just goes to show you how starved Warhammer fans have been for a good quality game, because same kind of thing with Dawn of War. I haven't delved too deep into it, but Dawn of War for me was a perfectly serviceable real-time strategy game that felt like a simplified version of StarCraft when I first played it. And of course I played it later and I loved it, but that was because I was more into the Warhammer aesthetic, and I was really impressed with how much they managed to pull from the lore and turn into a neat-looking game. So yeah, Space Marine 2 is worth getting. I think it's worth it at $60 with the roadmap that they've got coming out, and I think it would be worth it at a sale price if you have to wait for a sale. Sorry if that got kind of rambly, but I'm both trying to answer that question and concentrate on painting this dude. Okay. I think that's as bright as I want to go there. I'm eventually going to have to paint both the fur cloak and the other heads. And for the cloak, I think what I'm going to do is go like a really dark brown, and then kind of dry brush over it with a lighter one. Not actually, dry brushing might be too floppy for it. I don't know. I'll figure it out, but I'm getting to the point with the details where I'm kind of scared to keep going, because some of the details on this are so fine. You know what I mean? But yeah, if you like the first Space Marine game, you're gonna like this one. It's really good. If you were okay with the first Space Marine game, then I still recommend you do it, because that one is really good. But if you're just like, I didn't really like the first Space Marine game, then I don't know if you're gonna like this one. They definitely added more of a... They definitely were inspired by Dark Souls in a lot of ways, and the Souls games, because rolling and parrying are a much bigger part of the combat in ways that feel right and good. So yeah, there's a lot more to it than there was. Something that's kind of wild to me, I don't know if it's being picked up by the screen, by the camera, but I can see layer lines on this Mini. And I'm not saying that as, oh, haha, 3D printer wins again or whatever, but it is kind of tickling me that the molds for these have actual layer lines. Like, that tickles me greatly. And actually, I messed up earlier when I was putting this guy together. I put a bear claw, a limb, where I thought it went, and it turned out I was horrifically wrong. And I had to rip it off and move it, which sucked and was terrifying, because this resin is not particularly tough or durable. But it left this white mark there where I hadn't primed it. So I'm just going to go over this real quick with the brush. I don't know if this is even visible on camera. Nope, my hand was in the way. But yeah, there was just a black or a white mark there that needed to be removed. Okay, go ahead and do this. Go ahead and hit the camera real quick for this this mechanical apparatus that they have draped underneath, and or they have underneath their bear pelt, or their wolf pelt. I'm sorry, it's a Chthonian wolf. Forgot about that. It's one of the neat details of Horus is that he has, as part of his regalia, his war gear, a Chthonian wolf that he killed as like a pelt, which, even though he was supposed to be the greatest, he definitely had some very rough around the edges energy about him as a character, because Chthonian was apparently a very rough world. I don't know how much you know about the Horus Heresy, but at least for how limited they thought the book series was going to be, I feel like they did a pretty good job of giving Horus decent personality in the first book before things accelerated way too quickly, and he changed characters entirely, changed personality entirely in the later books, or in the second and third books. But a big part of it was that, he was beloved by all, and so the way they characterized him was just as this incredibly insightful, charismatic, and like, I don't want to say empathetic, understanding individual. He could read people really well. He knew how to utilize them well, knew how to acknowledge where they needed acknowledgement, and encourage where they needed encouragement. They definitely just made Horus feel like someone that you wanted to follow. And I thought that was impressive given the relatively limited time you get to spend with him before they kind of have to jump ahead because they didn't anticipate the Horus Heresy going for 70 million novels. Now, one thing that kind of irks me is that the pelt didn't quite sit flush on his armor, and I'm not sure what caused that. Other than just me not setting it up right, but like every other part of his build is like slotted, so it all fit very specifically on him. You know what I mean? I couldn't have messed up where his arms went because there were pegs for his arms to fit into, and the shoulder pads, the pauldrons, sit right on top, so I really couldn't move them down even if I wanted to. And the bear or the wolf pelt sits right on top, but like I said, it doesn't quite sit flush, and I'm not sure why. But not too big a deal, I suppose. Now I think I can't really use that brush anymore because it doesn't have a good enough trim on it. It's got point on it. It's too thick. So I'm switching over to a Winsor & Newton, and I'm going to start trying to do some of the detail work, like these little gem holders on his knife. That's all stuff that I can't hit with the slightly fatter brush that I was using. Yeah, just gonna go ahead and hit all these with this slight hint of brown black, so that when I go back over it with a lighter color, it has just that little bit hiding underneath it to kind of inform the next layer up. Now this is also a very minimal detail, so it's not one that's going to get a whole lot of attention, so I'm not going to work too hard on this. I'm going to do just enough so that when you look at the model you can see, oh, he's got a gold inlay for the gemstones. I think also I probably ought to do the same thing up here, because right now it's still that base purple from the original base coat. Honestly, this is where I wish I had done a better job of painting him in sub-assemblies, because I'm starting to hit spots that I can't reach quite well enough with the brush. And so I'm going to try my best. But these are probably things I'm going to have to touch up off camera. Now, I think what's going to happen here is this part's going to be ivory. I think what I want to do is give him an ivory grip, because it will stand out the most against everything else. And then from that ivory grip, I might give the bear head or the wolf head on top like a golden set. I'm not quite sure yet. But to get to that ivory, I'm going to need to create a shadow of brown. I'm going to try and do that first, because it will definitely kind of show better than the violet that I've got going on. And to get to that ivory, I'm going to kind of follow the same steps that I did for the skulls. I'm going to go from this dark brown up to a lighter brown, and then from the lighter brown straight to the ivory. Now, since this is a smaller area, I'm not going to want to go as hard with it, because I don't have as much room to be expressive. So instead, what I'm going to do is be minimalist with the details and keep them a little rough, because no one's really going to be able to notice anyway. Small bit. And they've got these studs on here too, so I'm probably going to end up painting the studs like a metallic color, probably a black. Kind of give that metallic look. Okay, a little bit lighter. Off on the finger a bit. Now, I will say with Space Marine, one of the biggest complaints about it in terms of the gameplay is that it is pretty relentlessly the same thing. So if you don't vibe with the combat system and the shooting, then you're going to get bored of it quickly. Because the game is almost entirely just that. It's basically, the campaign mode is basically just a tutorial to teach you for multiplayer. Because the game seems to have really decided to predicate itself on the fact that it's going to be, its lifespan is going to be because of the multiplayer. It's very stripped down in terms of extra things. There isn't a whole lot to do in the game. The most you can really do is kind of explore the world a little bit, because the maps are pretty linear, and just find like Vox logs, which add a little bit to the plot, but nothing of super incredible importance. And there isn't much else beyond the combat. You get to play with a jetpack at one point, but you don't really spend a whole lot of time with it, and you don't get to drive around in any vehicles as far as I can tell. So there's no, like, there's a moment where a character you get to jump onto a repulsor, which is the big hover tank that's supposed to be like a Land Raider, but then the game cuts to the new scene and you've already gotten back off. So there isn't really any use of vehicles outside of cutscenes. You do get a really cool scene with a Redemptor Dreadnought. So if you like Redemptor Dreadnoughts, you get to see one be awesome. But yeah, the game is really leaning on the idea that you enjoy the shooting and the melee combat that they crafted. And that'll be enough to make you want to keep coming back. And in my case it is. I really do enjoy the combat system a lot. But for a lot of other people, that might not be enough to really keep someone hooked onto the game for too long. But my biggest thing right now is I'm just excited to play it with friends, and once they start getting the game, which I think they'll be able to do with the upcoming paychecks they'll be receiving, then I anticipate having a really fun time with them. Okay. Gonna use a little bit of Averland Sunset, which is kind of my default yellow for a lot of things, and in this case it's going to help me inform my gold. We're going to take some of that Averland Sunset and mix it in with the brown and create kind of this really muddy looking gold brown. And while like I said, I don't have a whole lot of space to play with this, but I'm going to try and make it as impactful as I can over as small a space as necessary. After I'm done with this bit, then I'm going to have to do the gems, which I think are just going to be inlay red, because that'll make life a lot easier on me. Okay, and you can probably tell, I don't know if you can tell from the camera quality, but there is now just the slightest hint of a lighter color at the bottom of these rings. And actually, I can kind of do the same here, because this is all going to be gold bordered. And all I'm doing is adding just this little scratchy texture, which will then be able to be used to build up to a highlight, the gold. Gonna change angles here. And this is the thing that's kind of weird with a static camera, and the fact that always trying to film or paint for the camera is difficult. You're not always going to be able to see every angle I take, just because the way I've got to hold it means it kind of gets out of the camera's angle. Other times, it'll be fine. Go ahead. That. That. There we go. Going to go ahead and do a little bit of that gold inlay in here too. Now, since this is facing down, it's not going to catch a lot of the light, so that means I don't have to go very bright with this gold inlay. And I'll just continue to build it up top, where obviously I'm going to get a little bit more gold. Okay. A little bit more into the Averland Sunset, the gold brown. Hopefully, if I do this right, it'll really show up. So again, on this bottom part, I'm not going to want to go too bright simply because it is going to be reflecting off the ground. Now you can see the gold starting to form on the ring around gemstones. And again, this is a big reason why you want to have a really nice tipped brush. And while having some beaten up brushes tends to be okay for doing bigger work, having a really nicely pointed detail brush is going to get you a whole lot further with your painting. Same kind of thing. Create a little bit highlight by just kind of dabbing it in there. Here. There we go. That's what I want. A little slight scratch of gold on the high spots. On here, I think I'm just going to go ahead and do this that way because there isn't a whole lot of detail here for me to hit. There we go. Now, I want to go even brighter, right? So what I'm going to do is take some of this pale sand, which is a really great warm white. I'm going to mix it in with the Averland Sunset, and it kind of creates an ice yellow. Now normally I use Dorn Yellow as my ice yellow because it basically is an ice yellow, but I really don't feel like getting out another puddle of paint to do that when I can use a very serviceable one on such a small area, right? And in this case, I want the highlights to be even smaller because this is where the peak of the light is going to reflect off the gold. I will say something I accidentally did, which I think actually kind of works with this guy, is I made it so that like all of his highlights, all of the light sources on him are pretty rough. And in terms of, you know, the kind of world he's supposed to be in and the kind of environment he's supposed to be walking through, that actually does work pretty well. I was actually reading about this today. Something that does kind of irk me about modern Space Marine stuff is it always looks so clean. It always looks like it rolled right off of the assembly line and might have gotten a little bit of dirt on it as it traveled to or from the location of battle. And for creating an advertising aesthetic, that's great, and it looks real good. But for creating something that's supposed to be like a dirty, gritty war, hey, what's up? It's been a minute. That horse is looking dope. I picked up the older horse model to paint for my dad as a gift for the Luna Wolves colors. Very cool. Yeah, I still want to get the older Horus. It's still a great model, but this one was a gift as a thank you for doing a commission piece, and I really like it. And yeah, it has been a long time. How are you doing? How are things going for you, other than, you know, getting your dad a really cool Luna Wolves gift? I think I might do that just to be spicy if I painted the Abaddon versus Loken diorama last year. That is a neat diorama, and it probably turned out great. I've wanted to get it. Of course, the issue has been money, but I am now in a position where I will have more disposable income. So while I'm not exactly rolling in it, I will be in a situation where I can afford to buy myself more dumb stuff like this. This is all because, I don't know if you saw him, I don't remember if you saw him, but I painted an Abaddon that I bought myself as a gift, as a celebration for getting the new job. And, I didn't want to do him in Justair and Terminator colors, because I thought the black would be kind of boring. Had your infusion today a good thing? Working on a Warcry mini. That's very cool. That's really neat. I want to get into Warcry. I want to get into Age of Sigmar. I can't help but see how much fun the sculptors are having, like making minis for that game. And it's just like, I want to be a part of that. I want to celebrate the cool stuff they're making. So at some point, I'm going to start buying and painting Sigmar minis, and that excites me greatly. I really wanted. I'm actually doing. What the heck is it called? I'm doing a Skaven army right now because I bought the Skaven Tide box, and I was going to continue working on that for the month, but honestly, getting this kind of pushed that to the sidelines really quick, because who doesn't want to paint Horus Ascended immediately when you get him, right? You picked up a few of them to paint and you don't even play AOS. Got Skaven Tide for 180. That's a really good deal. I'm pretty sure I spent almost another 100 or another 50% of that. Congrats on the amazing deal for Skaven Tide. Admittedly, I purchased it from a local game store where they don't exactly cut prices very much, and that's because he's not just a mom and pop shop. He is the only person that works there, because he can't really afford to pay anyone else. So I really like to patronize him, or give him my money, because he's also a super nice guy, and I would be heartbroken if his store closed. Lucky find on eBay. Congrats. Yeah, when once they realized it had been printed to the ground, people had to really start selling at fair prices, right? So congratulations on finding one of them. I've painted a Gray Seer, and I started painting one of the other bosses that has like the musket, and I haven't finished yet, but I really like how they're turning out. One of the things I'm working on with Horus right now, sounds like a family local game store. Yeah, pretty much. He used to have more employees and was actually doing incredibly well for himself, and had bought this. It was a former tiki restaurant, and he bought it and had big ambitions. He was going to turn the downstairs, where the dining room area was, into like a big game area with a bar. And the top area was supposed to be where all of his stock went and where people could shop. But he bought it right before the pandemic hit. So he's been in like recovery mode ever since. And my heart goes out to the guy, because he's easily one of the nicest guys in the area. And the fact that his business is struggling because he bought it at the at the worst time possible, it really sucks. And so he's still doing well, don't get me wrong. People are still coming in and playing and buying and patronizing from him. But it's very clearly not to the level of success that he had hoped. And it's not really helped by the fact that around that same time, another game store opened up that focused on like Dungeons and Dragons and tabletop games, which was kind of his forte. And most recently, they decided to also get into like war games, like Warhammer. And so where he was kind of the only game in town, because no one else really wanted to sell or stock Warhammer, now he's being competed against with another store that was already outrageously popular, and honestly in a much better location. And then the other big box store in the area also decided to get into Warhammer, and so now he's competing against two other stores for people's money, and he's definitely the least impressive of the three, if you want to call it that. Like, the store's nice. It's not seedy or run down or anything. It's just that if you go to the big store that used to be nothing but Magic the Gathering, it's impressive. It's by far the most corporate friendly. And if you go to the other store, it's very cozy. The owners definitely tried to make it look like a D&D nerd's basement, and they wildly succeeded. And then you go to his store, and it's a converted restaurant. You know what I mean? Run by a single guy. So, I just don't want him to close. I like that store too much. I like him as a salesperson and as a person too much. But beyond that, what got me into wanting to paint this guy is that I painted Abaddon because I got a new job, and that new job was has pretty much been like the answer to a lot of my financial insecurity over the past few months. So I bought Abaddon, and I painted him in Sons of Horus colors because I didn't want to paint him in Justarin colors. And he looked really, really good. And it was like, man, I really want to do this more. I want to do like a Sons of Horus Heresy army. And as part of another job, the client offered to buy me Horus Ascended instead of paying me. And I mean, I was going to use the money to buy Horus Ascended anyway, so I was like, yes, let's do that. And so now I have Horus Ascended. And eventually, as I get some more spending money, I'm going to have a Sons of Horus Heresy army. Even if I never play the Horus Heresy game. I don't know. I get that. When we first went to this awesome game store, they gave me great deals. It started to just give me 0 discounts because I stopped, just to give me 0 discounts because I stopped going there. The guy just raising prices on probably the best customer felt scummy. Yeah, it does suck. I wonder how much of that was just due to the fact that the economy went through some weirdness. Because, yeah, I'd love to continue giving discounts, but if I can't keep the shop open, then unfortunately they gotta go away. So, he must have hit some kind of unsustainable model, or he's just a D-bag. Who knows? Trying to get a little bit more brightness now that I know where the light is bouncing off on some of these spots. Oh yeah, that's why okay, so I completely forgot. The reason why some of this has kind of washed together, and I'm kind of fighting to get highlights again, is because I didn't like how chalky they were looking. You really need to get back into painting my starter box Necrons. Batch painting them got so repetitive. It does, doesn't it? Batch painting is the worst unless you find a strategy. And, or you find some other kind of motivation. What I saw was a pretty good idea for motivation for painting large batches is to, like, reserve a model you really want to paint until you paint X number from the batch. And that way you can kind of incentivize yourself to keep working, which feels weird to do for a hobby. But that is probably one of the worst parts about this, is that you have to be incredibly patient with the painting aspect unless you really like the painting aspect. You'll be lurking for a bit, you're going to go paint. Very cool, very cool. Necrons, though, at the very least, they're relatively easy, right? You can prime them with a metallic paint or with a black paint and then just kind of dry brush a metallic paint over them and then do the details. I actually tried to help one of my friends with that because they were playing Necrons and they wanted to make them look like Ultron because they really like the Marvel comics and the like. So I suggested that they paint them red and then dry brush the silver over them. And that way they could be really, really sloppy with the red, and then the silver would kind of hide most of the, most of the faults of a quote-unquote sloppy paint job base coat. I don't know if they ever took me up on that offer, but what I ended up doing was painting a custom Necron model to be like their Scarlet Witch, because they also really liked that character. And I kind of did that, and I think they ended up liking it. They have it as a magnet on their fridge now because I magnetized the base, and I find that very funny. Now see, same thing here. I used a wash on this stuff, and unfortunately it's caused a lot of these peruges, I don't know how to pronounce it, to blend together, and it's made everything look kind of muddy, and that's not what we want. Especially when painting high detail models, you want very clear lines to show the eye, this is where one terminates and this is where another begins. I'm going to see what I can do about that. Go ahead and mix in some black in there. If only to guide it down the middle to give a real clear sense of separation. And that actually helped a lot. Again, creating contrast is super important on these things. Now, I will say, one thing that is kind of disappointing me is that this chest plate just looks really sloppy. And I'm not really sure how to fix that. I think maybe a little bit more blending and bringing together some of these colors will help. But right now, I'm kind of getting into the nitpicky nitty-gritty with a lot of these sections. And so I apologize if this gets a little bit bland, but again, I want this model to be pretty. And right now he just kind of looks rough. So I'm going back over and trying to clean up some of the messier parts of the paint job that just look really, really scratched on. Because honestly, and this is going to sound kind of weird, but there are parts of the paint job that just kind of look like eggs to me. You know, that weird multicolored, like golden yellow mixed with white, egg white mixed with some black scrubbies that you get off of the pan. He's starting to get kind of that look in some of these spots. So instead of looking like gold, it just looks really rough and crinkly. So I am going to do what I can to bring some of that back out. Put some brilliance back into this model. Okay. And again, this is where a very tight tip on a brush can really help out. Because if you don't have that, then it's going to be very hard to hit these little precise bits that you're trying to hit. And something that I'm still kind of learning that I really want to get better at is the concept of less is more. And honestly, that's where models like this are going to help me. Because a small line of a lighter color is going to do a lot more to emphasize a shine than if I were to try and paint the entire thing over again. And again, just little things to learn and to try and get better with. Because in a lot of cases, you really don't need a whole lot. You just need a little bit to tell the story and to tell the eyes that light reflected off here. And the biggest issue, as always, is trying to figure out exactly where that light needs to go. And something that's actually helped me a lot with that is looking at Flame On Miniatures' absolutely stunning non-metallic metal. And I don't know if you guys... I know for a fact I've shown him off on stream before because I'm just absolutely in awe at the level of control that individual has. But, the way they do non-metallic metal should be illegal. It's so beautifully done. I know that Pro Acryl has a paint set specifically for them and specifically for their non-metallic metal kit that they use. And I've honestly been a little tempted to try it. But it's like $50 for the paint set, and honestly, I don't want to spend that kind of money. As with anything else, I can at least draw inspiration from looking at what they've done. Like I said, I'm just getting a little bit of white on the gold decorations. Emphasize that that's where the light is hitting it. And hopefully that will do enough to tell the story that that part on his chest plate is supposed to be brighter because it is indeed gold. Now, a lot of this other stuff was actually done very scratchily, using a brush with a slightly less fine tip. And it was purely because a good scratchy dry brush actually does a decent job at, like, communicating light and texture than you would expect. And so hopefully, now that I'm going back over it, it's giving it some emphasis point. Because I wouldn't want to leave that as the final copy on something that's supposed to be one of the best display models I've painted. If it was, then it would just end up looking sloppy and unrefined. And of course, hairs. Get a pair of tweezers. These, where is it? These are good to have. Make a good pair of very fine tweezers. are super important to modeling. They allow you to do a lot, including placing very difficult pieces in very difficultly positioned places. Terribly. But you know what I mean. Having a good pair of tweezers allows you to have a little bit more flexibility than you would otherwise have. Oh, I'm not even on camera. My apologies, guys. A lot of little nitpicky detail work right now as I try and figure out where I need to go next with him. Now, most of this is going to get hit with kind of a red spray. I think what I might do is I might actually go ahead and get a really watered down red and go over the face before I do anything else with it, so I can give kind of that emphasis of, you know, red aura from behind him washing over him, or from behind his head washing over him. So that way it doesn't need to be as ridiculously prominent as it otherwise would be. But at the same time, I am kind of jazzed with how that's turning out. Now, he's going to not have like a normal swarthy human complexion. He's definitely going to be very pale and corpse-like, which is kind of the plan. So my hope is that it turns out really good. Okay, speaking of readability, this shoulder pauldron trim right here is going to have to get a little bit of paint just on the edges, and I hope I don't mess it up. And again, it's purely to create depth and separation from the rest of the pauldron. So yeah, that actually does a lot. Who'd have thunk it? Okay, what else needs to be done with this guy? I feel like I want to go back and do the non-metallic metals because there's nowhere near enough variance in them, and they don't hit the brightness that I'm looking for. So to do that, I'm going to need to get some light gray. I'm going to need to get some heavy gray. I'm actually going to get some white. All three of those. Now, what I'd never thought of before, and I think it is kind of neat, is that the heavy gray, which almost looks like a green, is going to be doing a lot of work as a shadow color. I've never thought of using like a green as a shadow color for metal, but it works remarkably well. So that is what the plan is going to be with that. My other plan is that hopefully I'm going to be out of this white soon so I can start using the really nice Pro Acryl white. If you haven't used it yet, Pro Acryl Titanium White is absolutely fantastic. And I strongly recommend anyone who is interested in painting with whites, which is a very difficult color to begin with, to use Pro Acryl Titanium White. It does take a minute to get used to Pro Acryl's texture, but I feel like they have an incredibly tremendous paint line, and their titanium white is unrivaled. Okay, so like I said, I'm going completely over this. I'm kind of, as Drawfee likes to say, deleting my art, because I'm not very fond of how it looks right now. And again, I'm using a slightly thicker brush to get better coverage. Thankfully, it's still precise enough that I can hit some of these areas. And if I realize that, no, it's not precise enough, then I'm going to switch over to the smaller one again. There we go there. Yeah, like I really hecked up this belt buckle. Because there are a lot of little teeth in there that I kind of didn't acknowledge. And when I went back over them with the red paint, it just ended up creating a very sloppy, ugly look. So we're going to go back over all of that. Try and create a better, cleaner coverage so it doesn't look like it was just slopped on. Especially with a quote-unquote display piece, that is the last thing you want, is for things to look like they were just kind of slapped onto the Mini. Control and intent, right? Now, I will say, I really need to start watching more incredibly skilled painter streams, which shouldn't be difficult because I've raided into some, and I've subscribed to others, so I should be able to find them. It's just a matter of like taking the time to sit down and really study how they're painting their models. And of course, these are very short examples. Every time I look at a master painter's YouTube channel, and they have the quick tutorial of how they made this look like XYZ, the big thing I always notice is that they tend to be using a really good tip on their brush, and they tend to know exactly where to place their colors. And those are kind of the two places I struggle the most. So it's just all about consistency and precision. And so hopefully that's a skill I'll be able to master. And I know that if I can do it, so can any of you. As with anything else, it's just a matter of doing it, right? Now, something that's going to be interesting to me is when I start painting the tubes that are going into Horus's head, I don't want to paint those black. Because of all of the other color variants around the guy, I actually don't want to have just straight black tubes, because it's going to look weird coming off of the red background. So what I'm probably going to do there is I'm probably actually going to go ahead and paint them with a purple and work my way up, play off the red, but I'm not quite sure yet. That's something I'll have to figure out as I continue working on them. Okay, let's put some of this heavy gray. Let's make some kind of stained, dulled metal. Kind of the same thing. It's going to create just a little bit of off color on here, which will then be accentuated on as I start adding more colors in, right? At least that's kind of the plan. Right now, it's just kind of blending in really hard to the previous black that I put down, and that's fine. What it is going to do is just give it a little bit more of a dimension. And that will really start to pay dividends as I start putting other colors on top of it. Somewhere else I'm going to need to hit is like the areas around the eye, because again, these knee pads, they're kind of flat. And one of the worst things you can have on a painted model that you're trying to use for a display is a flat color. Anything that prevents the model from having depth is generally something you should work on trying to fix. Something I thought was kind of neat that I didn't notice. One of the painters who won a Golden Demon, they actually painted the same model, and I remember stumbling into their stream and be like, holy crap, that is an incredibly well painted Horus. I think they were working on his mace at the time, and he went ahead and won. I think it was, I'm pretty sure he won bronze with it, which is obscene at the Golden Demon level. But oh my gosh, I forgot where I was going with it. It was just incredible watching his patience and seeing his placement and everything. So hopefully someday I will be there too. Okay, like I said, right now you can't really see much. It's just a dark green gray going on top of a dark black. So hopefully as I continue working on him, you'll see more and more of it kind of come up. Something I did find out though, and this is something I really should have known, and so I feel kind of sheepish to admit that this is a thing, but like lighting is so darn important to how good or bad a model looks, right? And that's because I've mentioned it before, but I entered, oh that's terrible lighting, terrible angle. I entered a local painting competition that took place at the same time as like a tabletop gaming convention in my town, and I entered my Abaddon, which I'm very proud of, and I'm still very proud of him. I think I did a great job painting that model. And based on the pictures I was able to take of him, I was like, this model is too good to not win. This model's going to win. And I won third with it, which I was really proud of, and I'm really stoked about still. But I saw the pictures that they posted of him online, and all I could think of is these are not super good pictures. They're very washed out, and my biggest problem, and this was purely a me thing, but they put them on a blue background, which I guess did a great job of kind of showing, like, brightening up the models without washing them out like a white would. But in the case of mine, it also washed out the object source lighting I had done for him. And so that just ended up being kind of a buzzkill. But it did really emphasize to me how important lighting is for a model. Because when I took photos of him, I did so on both a white and a black background. And on both of those, you could really see the object source lighting pop. You could really see how his armor kind of hovered between Sons of Horus green and Black Legion black, depending on how you looked at him. And I thought that was a super cool effect that I hoped would carry over in the judging. And I'm not sure if it did, but they apparently liked it enough to give it 3rd place. Okay. Now, something I need to get better at, patient, because something I've noticed is that I'll start doing like a decent blend, and then all of a sudden I'll be like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then I'll start taking bigger, broader jumps in the color. And what that'll tend to do is that'll create these really unsightly lines and clear borders where you go from one color to the other. And with good blending, that doesn't happen. With good blending, either your eyes are tricked enough, or there's a subtle enough transition between, say, blue to red, or the shadow of a non-metallic metal and the highlight of a non-metallic metal that you don't even notice. It just kind of smoothly and gradually changes. With my blending, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And then suddenly it's very drastic. So hopefully, I'll be able to change that a little bit as I practice on this model. Okay, I have to turn him a funny way so I can reach the flames under his chest. Something else that's really helped with my painting is recognizing that not every model has to be perfect everywhere. In a lot of cases, you should take each model as an opportunity to practice something, right? Practice a new skill. And that way, even if you mess it up, you know that you've tried it and your body can internalize it little by little until eventually it looks really, really good on another model that you're working on that you want to be like specials. A little bit that white here. Hopefully that will lighten up that gray just enough for me to play with it. Hopefully I'll find the focus again. Now, something that I will never understand, and I think it's just voodoo magic, and not voodoo magic, I don't want to say that, that's kind of bad, that I think is just magic, is how some of these painters will have like next to nothing on their brush, and you'll see them drag the brush across a section of the model, and then suddenly the model just starts to gradually lighten up. Like it goes from being a dark brown to being like this weathered leather looking cracking along the model. And all I can think of is, how did you do that? That's not fair. You didn't have any paint on that brush. And all I can really think of, and I know this isn't the case, but I always just think they don't have any paint on that brush and they're not actually doing anything. But when they next cut, they're going to show that the model's beautifully painted. And again, I know that's not true. But that's just what it feels like sometimes when you watch them be like, and then suddenly they've got this beautiful blend going on. And again, that's just more incentive for me to actually start watching some of these long form paint jobs so I can see it go from, primed black but otherwise unpainted model
up to what they eventually become. So I will say there is one miniature painter. I talked about him a minute ago, but if you really want to see a good miniature painter do good miniature painting and like be able to visibly see the changes, Phil on Miniatures is right there. He is absolutely fantastic. Go ahead and do a little bit of that. Kind of create a reflective highlight here. Let's hope that I did this right. There we go. Push that around just enough. And in this case, I got to change the angle so only the tip of my brush hits it, so it doesn't leave that chunky end point. Okay. I think I could be happy with that for now. Now, something else I got to be careful about, and this is something I struggle with, is the lighting down here is so much better than literally anywhere else you would see the model that I think I'm bright enough, and then I go to another light source and try and show up the model, and it's dull as shit. So that's something else you got to be careful about, is make sure to look at your models in different lights so you can see just how actually bright or vivid or dull the model truly is versus what it looks like in that perfect studio lighting you've got going on. Or in some cases, that ultra poor studio lighting you've got going on. Because you might be painting your mini and think, man, this mini looks like dog shit. I've done a bad job with him. He's not vibrant. Everything looks dull and muddy. And then you take him out of that light and you look at him again and you realize, oh no, he looks fantastic. He or she, they look fantastic. A piece of plastic don't have to keep it that way. But yeah, so don't get too discouraged if you're not happy with how it's turning out. And another thing that I thought was kind of neat is learning to just kind of sleep on it, you know? Because you may not be happy with where it is, but that's because you've been too close to the model. You know what I mean? You've been working on it too much, and all you're seeing are the fine little nitpicky details. And you might just need to step back from it. Go to sleep. Look at it again in the morning. And then your eyes can kind of take it in brandy new. And see it for the composition as opposed to the individual little nitpicks that you're having with it at any given moment. And I don't remember what that's called. I remember learning about that just, I think earlier today, that's actually a thing with art. You get sick of looking at it until you kind of stop, and then you come back to it, and suddenly it looks brilliant. Okay. A little white into that. At some point I'm going to have to buck up and actually try and do a highlight on these, because right now I'm just slowly transitioning to a lighter shade of gray. And to be completely honest, it's because I'm afraid of doing like a super bright white border on it, and that suddenly looking just like chalk being dragged across it. So something I did here and I was really appreciative of is you never really want to go up to pure white over large spaces, because it will just kind of chalk out your model. Or whatever you happen to be working on medium-wise. You want to use white very sparingly and in small spots to imply brightness. And that makes a whole lot of sense to me. Because yeah, if you're just implying brightness, you're not making it very bombastic, and sometimes you don't need to be bombastic with white. Like you can see, I'm just putting these little white highlights where I think they might belong. And they're doing a lot more work than you would expect. At least from my point of view. I have no idea if this looks any good from where you guys are. I suppose I'll find out later when I post it, and you're like, wow, that looks fantastic. Or, wow, that looks like a model. Who knows? Little bits. Yeah, already I think that looks a whole lot better than it did.
And I haven't even gone up to pure white yet. This is still a very heavily diluted white with the dark gray. There we go. Let's see if I can add some of that back in, because I completely forgot about the knee pads. Okay. A little bit more. Because all I'm trying to do right now is get some separation. Again, there's a sharp angle here, but it's very flat looking if you don't have good edge highlight. And now, infinitely more visible. Exactly what I'm looking for. Add a little bit more darkness back into that, because I have no idea what this is going to look like against this knee pad. But again, be stingy with your highlights. Okay, that's a little too. A little bit of an edge highlight down there, and then just the slightest amount of a highlight going up. That actually turned out really good, and I didn't even mean it to. Do the same thing over here and try your best not to hack it up. Tiny little dabby dab. And there we go. Actually turned out pretty okay. Okay. Looks like I've got a little more work to do. See, I'm having a big issue right now with his belly buckle. I don't know what else to call it, but the big eye symbol. Because there's so much left over, just kind of dull gray, and I don't like how that looks. What I'm going to do is just ease it out a little bit. Hit some of these spots that are a little dull and unsightly. Just give it a little bit more complete a shape, because right now it's just kind of blending into everything else. And actually, yeah, that looks a whole lot better. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go ahead and go back and do some of these flames, which again are just going to get a light dusting of a brighter color. Doesn't need a whole lot, just to kind of show that they are separate from the piece in front of them. A little bit brighter, mayhaps. I don't know if you can see that. Yep. And I think that will have to do, given my general inability to reach them. But yeah, that already looks a whole lot better. Now I think the next thing is that these eyes of Horus I've got on him, they're very kind of dull. You know what I mean? There's not a whole lot going on them. They're very flat black, so I probably first need to clean them up a little bit, and then go ahead and go back over them with a little bit more detail. Because right now they're just kind of black, and unfortunately the black is flat. I'm going to kind of do the same thing. So probably not to that level of detail that I just did now that I've got some practice with it. Just going to go ahead and very lightly do some edge highlighting to really separate them from the red background they're on. I'll probably need to do it with a brighter color now that I'm looking at it. Then just add a little bit of brightness where the light is most likely going to hit them. Because yeah, they just kind of are blending into the red background of the eye itself. That's not quite what I want with them. I want some depth to come out of these things. Yeah, that immediately looks a million times better. That just needs to have black side, because I can clearly see. There we go. And again, I'm kind of getting a little nitpicky, but again, expensive model. Important model. Pretty model. I want to make it look good.
Let's go ahead, take as much paint off as I can. Slightest little bit on for an edge highlight.
We have success. Fantastic.
Same kind of thing, just a little bit of a highlight to show that there is some light reflecting off of center. Or the raised section, I mean. Doesn't have to be a lot, can definitely be subtle.
Subtle is good in this case. But it needs to be there, because otherwise it just kind of looks like a blob. And of course, that could just be my inept painting happening.
But that's what we're here for, is the learning experience, right? Okay. Let's see if I can get this one on its chest, because this one didn't turn out very good. Hopefully some edge highlighting will help clarify it. Get rid of some of that sloppiness.
Yeah, kinda. I might have to go back over that. I'm not liking how that looks. We're gonna go ahead and bring that back to black.
There we go. Same with this one up here. This one wasn't very raised, and so I was having kind of a problem actively finding where the eye ended versus where the red background began. Okay, same kind of trying to end as gently as possible.
Hopefully get as much of the moisture out as possible. Great googly moogly.
See, this is also where people with much superior eyes. Hey, QB, how's it going? I'm working on a very, very delicate part of this dude. What are you doing? What are you doing here? I heard you go upstairs earlier, but I didn't know what you were planning on doing up there. Maybe playing some more Fields of Mystara? Gonna play some Fields of Mystery, that's it. Yeah, cool. I hope you have lots of fun. I hope you smooch all of the people you want to smooch in that game. But right now, me personally, I'm just trying to hit some of these spots that came out a little sloppy from my paint job in the dining room.
Hoping that maybe I can get them to something presentable. Okay. Unfortunate. I don't think this guy is really going to look much better. And by this guy, I mean the eye that I have on his left pauldron.
And part of that is just because I don't have the tight vision to really be able to do much with it in making it look nicer. So all I can really do is hit it with a bit of a highlight and hope that's going to be enough.
Now again, biggest issue here is just that there's a lot to this model, and I gotta try my best to make sure every bit of it sings just a little bit. I think by and large I have accomplished that. Looking back, some of these eyes, they are definitely understated. So we're gonna go back again, and I'm gonna try not to mess this up too badly, but like his knee, I can barely tell that there's an edge highlight on there. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I used such a tight off gray that it barely shows up. So I'm not even going to try and do like a steady shot on this. I'm going to do a very, very gentle whisper of an edge highlight. And
that will hopefully bring it out a little more. Same with right here. I'm not going to redo the entire thing, just enough to hopefully bring it out a smidgen more. So there. This one I don't feel as compelled to do much on because it's kind of hidden. So I am going to try and hit it just a bit. But nowhere near the same love and attention I just gave the last one. There we go.
And yeah, that definitely is showing up better, at least in my eyes. Plurm. I know, right? Plurm. Much. Okay.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Hooray. One. These sparse little highlights to bring a little bit more attention, a little bit more separation. That's all this is. Trying to make it look a little bit more clear. Okay. Here if I can, yep, there we go. Kind of the same in here, because there are actually 3 layers to this, and unfortunately none of them were really showing up because I was a little bit too scared to touch any of them with a bright color in fear that it would all just kind of smudge together. Just now, I got really lucky, and now it's showing up real good.
A little bit more of that white in.
Right off against the in. I can do kind of the same thing here. Nope, that's too wet. That's going to look terrible. So take a little bit more off. Glad I didn't do that right on the eye. That would have been awful.
Nope, still too wet. And now I'm getting to that problem where like moisture control is super important for the brushes.
If you have too much moisture, then it's just going to puddle and pool everywhere, and that looks really, really bad. There we go. A little bit. And yeah, that looks infinitely better. I don't know how well you guys can see it, but adding that little bit of white border on these really, really helped. At least I think so. Okay, there we go. Now the eyes of Horus are painted. God, I got a lot left to do on him. I actually need to go back into the medallion and paint that thing red. So I think I'm going to do that real quick. This is quite an ambitious model. What the? Oh, okay, he's in the way. I was like, what the heck just got all over my wet palette? Turns out that Horus just got all over my wet palette because I placed him in front of it on the camera. Silly me. Okay. Thankfully, this small little eye of Horus for Nintendo game Plurm. Are you watching the video again? Is that why you're talking about Plurm? Did I make it so that you can't stop watching the video? That's very funny. So for those of you who don't know, Game Grumps put out, or not Game Grumps, Starbomb put out a music video for their new album. And it's done in the style of the Yin Yang Twins Whisper song from like the early 2000s. But it's about Nintendo Switch releases. And one of the things he talks about is a game called Plurm. And it's very silly. And if you like the Game Grumps at all, I strongly suggest you go see it if you haven't. But as dirty as the song is, as gross as the song is, it's going to get stuck in your head. Okay, well that was easy enough. I was going to have to use more red than that. What else do I have to do here? Like I said, I think for the most part, he's done in a lot of places. Maybe I should go back and re-highlight some of the leather, because it definitely looks a little weak.
Could definitely do with some more highlights, so I suppose I'll do that. I know I've got some more metal on his belt buckles I'm going to need to do, so I might go back and do that as well soon. Again, one of the things that happened when I kind of washed everything down with a flesh or like a wash is that it made all of these individual strips of leather kind of blend in together. In Log Sensu, good to see you. Horus, top 10 Primarchs for sure. Top 10 Primarchs that don't exist anymore. Just kidding. He's very cool, and so is this model. I'm having so much fun trying to paint this model and figure out what to do with it. It's a very ambitious one, and I'm not regretting this at all, I promise. But man, is there so much to paint. You don't want to screw it up because it's such a beautiful, beautiful set piece. I'm definitely going to be making a Sons of Horus army because of this guy. So hopefully this will all go well. But once I start having a little bit more spending money, that's where some of it's going to go, is building up a Sons of Horus army. Because this is just too cool. The colors are too good. Everything about this model is just too darn good. I did not realize that he had a head underneath one of his little fur dealies. That's pretty funny. You're painting your Chaos Space Marine Legionaries and Sons of Horus colors. Well, that's because you have good taste, my friend. Yeah, that is a good color to paint them in. I actually ended up doing that with my Abaddon the Despoiler, and that's what inspired me to do this. I bought an Abaddon the Despoiler as a way to celebrate getting a new job a couple months ago, about a month ago, and I just got really into painting him to make him look good. I actually entered him in a painting competition, which I didn't win, but I placed third in, and that's nothing to sneeze at. But yeah, it inspired me enough to want to keep doing the paint scheme, and that's why Horus is getting painted that way. I got Horus as as payment for doing another commission of Gilliman, which I think is very funny. And like I've got to paint this guy in the same colors. It's such a good color scheme. But right now, the thing I'm struggling with is there's a lot of areas here where I'd like to get better contrast and better separation between individual parts of the model. So I'm trying to go back and fill in anything that looks like it just blends too much together. Yeah, I was seriously considering starting a Chaos Space Marine army and doing the Sons of Horus colors, but then I realized that's an awful lot of trim that I don't want to paint. So the fact that you're doing that, kudos to you. What I might do, since you mentioned Legionnaires, is I might get a kill team and do that and make them all Sons of Horus colored. Or honestly, since it's a kill team, I might go ahead and do a little bit of everything. Sons of Horus, Emperor's Children, Iron Warriors, etc., etc. And that way I can kind of scratch that itch, because every time I read about a faction or hear about a faction, I'm like, wow, they're really cool. I want to paint them. And I want to collect a whole army of them. And then I get like halfway done, and then I'm like, man, I really hate the fact that I still have a whole army to paint. So I'm trying to stop doing that. And I think by buying like a kill team of Legionaries, that'll probably be enough for me to be like, okay, I got it out of my system. I'm done. But with like the Sons of Horus army that I want to do, I'm actually going to end up cheating a little bit. I bought Sons of Horus airbrush color, and I'm going to use that to get most of the main infantry done. But hopefully, my desire to paint it won't die out like 2 minutes in or 2 models in. Same kind of thing here, just creating more separation between the leather straps. He's got in his Cataphract Terminator armor. And it will all stand out better, which is exactly what I'm looking for. I already think I have succeeded. Hey Grim Lady, good to see you. Thank you for coming to my stream. I'm Ben Repaints. I'm a small-time miniature painter, and I just kind of do this for fun every Tuesday. Right now, I am painting up a Horus Ascended, hopefully in focus now. and I'm working on trying to get him painted up so I can have one. He was kind of a payment for doing a commission for a Gilliman that I did, and it's just such a cool model. I immediately had to jump on it, and so that is what I'm working on right now. How are you doing? What are you up to? How's your evening been? Well, it's evening for me. I don't know if it's evening for you. It's 8:45 right now. So after a day of work, I am here painting up this super cool mini. As I was just saying, I got very inspired to do this paint scheme after painting Abaddon the Despoiler in this paint scheme, and thinking, wow, this is cool. I want to do a Sons of Horus army like this. But then realizing I didn't want to do it in Chaos Trim because Chaos Trim is obscene and would make me very sad. Instead, I'm going back into Age of Darkness, and I'm eventually going to start fleshing out and buying a Sons of Horus army, hopefully. This guy is step 1. Just working on some Trader Guard. I'm very tickled at how many, and I'll call it anti-Imperial players I'm getting tonight. I also have aspirations to do Trader Guard because I want to do a Guard army, but I don't just want to do a Guard army, you know? So I'm most likely going to go Trader Guard. I've got some proxies already kind of printed out, and they're just waiting in the queue for me to get to painting them. So hopefully I will be able to do that soon. I think, yeah, I painted one of their faces, and that's as far as I got. So I don't know how well this is going to show up, but this guy. I think this might have actually been an alternate sculpt, and the other one is already attached to the, not Commissar, but to, like, you play Imperial Fists, painting up Pedro Cantor as well. Just want to kit bash these Cadians that have been sitting here for like 2 years. I get that. Yeah, funnily enough, I play Imperial Fists. I have quite a few of them. I started the hobby about 5 years ago, so I don't have an extensive collection, but the Imperial Fists were my first major army. So I'm right there with you. Most of them are upstairs, unfortunately. He's not even on screen. The reason I'm doing Chaos Space Marines, you can paint a bunch of different schemes in one army. Not only do you have the legions that have their specific colors, but you have Marines that have fallen to Chaos more recently, so you can incorporate chapter schemes into the Force as well. See, that's good thinking. That makes a whole lot of sense to me. Like, if you don't know what you want to paint, or you want to paint a lot of things, just paint Chaos Space Marines. That way you can paint everything. And I think that's a pretty good idea. It gives you a lot of flexibility with how your Legion is going to look. Okay, these studs need to be getting at least a little bit of gold on them. Okay. The painting process never gets stale. Yeah, that's absolutely fair. I think, like I said, my biggest thing, and I applaud you for conquering this issue, is dealing with all of the trim would drive me nuts. And that's why I think I'm going to get a Chaos Legionaries kill team and be done with it there. And then I can just admire your paint jobs from afar. Okay. A little bit brighter. A little bit brighter. Just a little bit brighter. And I think in terms of brightness, this is where I want to stop, because these studs are not going to be visible. There we go. Absolutely, yes, got a squad of Night Lords in my Crimson Slaughter army. Very cool. Yeah, Night Lords are awesome, and I'm glad that they got their time in the sun. Okay. I really don't want to. Actually, no, you know what? I was going to say I really don't want to, but I think I got to start painting his face now. But what I think I can do, I can take some of this red and mix it in, take some of this black, mix it in, and I can go ahead and start making kind of a shadow wash for his gun, because his gun ended up being way too red for my liking. And so I need to go ahead and add some shadows in there to create some contrast. Because I didn't want his gun to be black. I thought the black was kind of boring. So instead I painted it red. What's your gold recipe, if you don't mind me asking? That's a really good question. I go with a dark brown, and then actually, I have a base I can do it on real quick. I go with a dark brown, and then I go to like a regular brown, and then potentially I either go gold brown, like a yellowy gold brown, or I go orange. Oh, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. So yeah, like right here is just a dark or a flat brown and black, and actually I need more than that. That's nowhere near enough. Shame on me. Let's get some more on there. And I paint it up like so. So I've got that dark brown base, which hopefully you can see okay. And then from there, I go into just kind of the brown itself. And I paint over it. I'm doing this fairly quickly, so it's not going to dry appropriately. But then I use kind of that flat brown. And then depending on how I'm feeling, if I want a warmer gold, I'll add some orange. If I just kind of want to get a flat gold, I'll just add some Averland Sunset into the brown and mix that together. And you can probably see it in the little palette camera off to the lower left of the screen. But then I'll start painting that in. And that will kind of get me this ugly dark brown, dark gold look to it. A little bit more Averland Sunset since I'm doing this quickly. And then I'll just add a little bit more and continue going up that ladder. And eventually I do... Gosh darn it, this is all still wet, so it's not very helpful. Eventually I'll add some... ice yellow, or in some cases, I'll just go ahead and add some... Gosh, what the heck is it called? Pale sand at the very end for the highlight. Now normally, when it's flat, I can make this look a whole lot better. Or when it's not flat. But that's kind of the way I go up. And normally, you want more of the yellow, obviously, than you do the shadow color. But since I was rushing, I ended up with a lot more of the shadow than I did the highlight. Let's see if I can work my way back. Now you've given me a challenge. I gotta do this. I gotta save face because I've been working on this all evening. Yeah, let's see. If I can go back a little bit with that brown. Yeah, you can kind of see it getting brighter. It's obviously getting a little stuck right here because I'm mixing wet paints on wet paints, and that's not really a good look. But eventually, when I get past that kind of yucky color, it ends up becoming more of this this brighter yellow. And then from the brighter yellow, some pale sand mix in. And that kind of gives me the very top of the color, which goes like up here. And generally, it looks pretty good. I'm pretty new to the hobby, so recently been trying non-metallic metal on your smaller units like Cultists, lots of trial and error. Yeah, it took me a long time to get to a point where I felt like my non-metallic metal looked okay. Until then, it was a lot of, like, kicking my own ass about it. Scarily enough, one of the first models that I really leaned into non-metallic metal with was Gilliman. And it turned out pretty okay. Let me find it real quick. 2021? That was 20... Yeah. Let me... 22. Yep, there it is. 2022. Okay. Nope, that's empty. Why are you empty? One moment. I'm gonna find this for you so you can see what he looked like. Nope. Gilliman was supposed to be not there. Bowser, Bowser, where'd he go? There's some family photos. No way I got Rogotorn before I got... those are my buddies. They're mine. When did we take a really nice... Yeah? Ah, there it is. Okay. Whoa. A lock. What's going on here? There we go. Where'd it go? Window capture. Gilliman. That was the first time I really tried to do non-metallic metal, and it really is just kind of trying to figure out where the highlights, the high spots are supposed to be versus where the shadows are supposed to be. And I'll admit, I went back and I fixed him a little bit to try and really make him look good. This actually ended up winning me a small painting competition. But as you zoom in, you can kind of see where it starts to fall apart a smidgen. But it ended up looking pretty okay. Like you can see back there, there's just like a white blob, or an off-white blob, and then a yellow blob, and then a brown blob. But it all sells from further away, right? So it is just about like practicing it relentlessly and trying to get really, used to it. What I did find out, what I thought was kind of cool, was if you have larger areas that need to be non-metallic metalled, you can actually cheat really hard by dry brushing. Where is it? Because I tried to do, it was Flame On Miniatures has an incredibly beautiful non-metallic metal that they do with Celestine, and it's one of the prettiest things I've ever seen. But it's not one that I can do. It's ridiculous how good it is. And I tried to emulate it, and then I failed, and then I gave up, and I just dry brushed it. And it ended up looking really good. Let me see if I can find it real quick. My apologies. Oh, for reference, I went back and I redid Gilliman as part of a commission, and you can kind of see where I've improved. Because this is the newer Gilliman. This is the one I did actually about a month ago as part of a commission. And in a lot of ways, it does look better. At least I think so. I think the non-metallic metal looks a whole lot better. It's a whole lot smoother with its transitions. So it is something that you just continue to work on and you continue to get better at. Let me see if I can find the other one. I'm looking for... Where are you, Celestine? No, I've got it. There she is. Okay, so like for this one, these are entirely dry brushed, which blows my mind. That they ended up looking so good. I think the lighting helps, but this Celestine and her Gemini Superia, they're dry brushed. The one on the right, closest to my little VTuber, or my little PNG tuber, that's the one where I really tried to go hard, and you can see that there's more warmth in it because there's more of an orange layer to it. But the other two are dry brushed, and you can see it looks really good. I started with a dark brown dry brush, and then I dry brushed it with a brown yellow, and then I dry brushed it with a yellow. And then I dry brushed it with a yellow, ice yellow, and then just a highlight of an ice yellow. So you can cheat non-metallic metal really nicely once you kind of start understanding where the lighting goes. So that's definitely a way to do it if you want to get really quick and dirty non-metallic metals. You know what I mean? But yeah, actually learning how to do non-metallic metal, very difficult. Very, very difficult. And actually, my little PNG tuber, he's holding my brain just died, I'm sorry. He's holding the Abaddon that I worked on, because I was just so darn proud of the model. So since I'm already kind of showing stuff off, you can kind of see where my inspiration came from for my Horus. This is the Abaddon that I did. And you can probably see now more clearly the little mini that I'm holding in my picture. But that's the Abaddon I did. Everything on that is non-metallic metal. There's some object source lighting on the head, on the torch behind him, on the sword and the claw. But that's what inspired me to really want to do this Horus that I'm working on right now. So hopefully, when I finish with Horus, he's going to look, somewhere near as good as this guy, if not better. But that's kind of the plan. That's where the inspiration came from. So let's see. I made myself a gross little dark red that hopefully has not dried out too badly. It is not dried out too badly. I'm actually mixing in some flow improver. And we're going to go ahead and create some shadows over here. What you guys are kind of getting to see right now is what I call the ugly phase. And the ugly phase, I feel, is very important to the miniature painting process, and pretty much any artistic process, which I wouldn't know as much about, but my wife tells me it's important, and she's an artist, is that your stuff isn't going to look beautiful all the way through, and you've really got to trust the moments where it doesn't look pretty,
so that you can push through to the points where it's going to be beautiful. And I've just learned to start calling it the ugly phase, and I've learned to start trusting the ugly phase. That's kind of what it boils down to. You got the old metal Abaddon as a Terminator in your Chaos Space Marine army? Oh, does their arm stay on by any chance? Is he armless? Mostly armless? Somewhat armless? I think that's one of my favorite things about that model, is that the poor arms just can't stay up. Trust the process. Yes, trust the process. Like I said, trust the ugly phase, because eventually it won't be ugly no more. I didn't realize you were still listening. I appreciate you being here, dear. It's my wife. She's Art by QB. She does beautiful D&D art. So if you like D&D art and whatnot, you should check out artbyqb.com. Okay, this can actually deserve to be a little darker since it's going to be in the shadows. But yeah, just a little bit of depth in there. The arm has to be secured with JB Weld. Yeah, definitely, right? Because that was the meme with that old Abaddon, is that his arm would just keep falling off, if I recall properly. And I think that's really funny. And actually, just for kicks and giggles, I'm going to add this darker purple, this darker red into the shadows here. And hopefully, that will help bring out a nicer contrast between the orangey yellow highlights of the eyes and the shadowy parts of the eyes, the darker parts. Especially right here where I've accidentally got too much of the black in some spots. Okay. That up there. Talk about eyeliner. So yeah, I didn't even notice. Like, I remember what I was going with a while ago. The painter that I mentioned did this and won a Golden Demon with it. They actually ground down the raised eye section on the armor and went ahead and just hand painted it on. And I think they're a freaking mad lad, because that's obscenely difficult to do. I'm not very good with the freehanding aspect of this hobby yet. And so knowing that that individual went ahead and just did that is like, lordy lordy. No wonder you won a Golden Demon. Okay. Eventually, I'm going to need to do that pelt. The pelt and the cape, and I think some of these heads are really the last things I need to do for them. But I've been putting off working on Horus's head for a while now. So I think the next thing I'm going to need to do is that. So that's going to be a little bit of purple, a little bit of flesh tone. We're going to hope it'll come together. We're going to use Gal Vorback. So Gal Vorback is kind of this ruddy maroon red that I actually used as a what did I use this for? I bought this for something. I bought this for some other thing, and it was very good for what it was, and I don't remember what it was. But I bought it for something else, and now I'm going to use it to help put some dark shadow colors on Horus's face. And then we're going to work our way up to be honest, what's going to be a very pale flesh tone. The flesh tone I'm going to use is going to be Rakarth flesh. And honestly, I know that Games Workshop has their own set of paint line and everything. You don't really need to use Games Workshop paints for these. You can kind of fudge it by mixing paints together to get approximations. That'll also teach you a lot about the paint you're using, because one of the things I found out about Games Workshop is because they have very specific pigments, when you start mixing them or diluting them, they tend to go weird colors as like the key color mixture in them kind of comes out. You can't always trust that you're going to get the color you hope to get when you mix two Games Workshop paints. I did not mix anywhere near as well as I hoped it would. That's okay. So we're going to take some of the thinner, or some of the flow improver. We're going to mix in some of this Gal Vorback red, and what that will hopefully do is create a thin enough paint layer, and I'm not going to be like slopping it on. Okay, we're just going to go ahead and start dragging towards the front, because that's where the biggest concentration of this color is going to be. Now, something that I think is kind of neat about this Horus mini that they really paid attention to is that he has a lot of these tubes feeding into his armor. And so his flesh has a lot of these weird little rolls and curls where it's bunching up against the tubing. And so he's going to have a whole lot of personality when I'm done with him. Okay, and what hopefully this coloring is going to do is it's going to make it so that when I start putting a flesh tone on him, he looks pallid. You know what I mean? He's got kind of this this corpsey look about him. Because even though he is supposedly flying high on chaos juice, that doesn't mean that he's been well nourished, so his skin can't really look very ruddy. So hopefully, as I continue working on this face, that's what we're going to get. Is a not particularly ruddy, very sallow-faced, corpse-like Horus. Now, one thing that is kind of happening is I'm not letting my paints dry, and that's causing the paint to just kind of puddle and pool, and that's not what we want. So I'm going to be a cheeky little guy, and I'm going to grab a hairdryer, and I'm just going to go ahead and force it to dry. And what that'll do is it'll give me another layer to work off of. Much better. Now he's not kind of puddling everywhere. Now, something about the flow improver I used is it prevents the paint from kind of drying quickly. And it also allows it to, you know, flow better. So, depending on your needs, that might be something that's really important to you. That might be something that you actually don't want. You may want your paints to be a little stodgier. But for me and what I'm doing, I do want the paints to be fairly thin, and I do want them to not dry out. Same thing here. And so this is going to have to be done over multiple layers of applications, because I also don't want the paint to be thick in this area. Otherwise, it's going to fill in all those ultra-fine details that Horus has going on his face. Okay, some of that. And you can see as I continue doing this that you're going to see more and more of this purple start overtaking the red underneath. Okay. A little bit of it in there. Definitely on the nose. Yeah, you can already see, like, his head is now a completely different shade than the rest of his face is a different shade than the rest of his head, because so much more of it is now being consumed by this Galvorback color versus the color of the red light behind him. Well, hopefully what I'll be able to do is work these together to create a really good, convincing, like, purple colored pale flesh tone. Now, the thing that kind of sucks about this is it's been too long since I've painted Abaddon, and I've honestly forgotten how I did most of the stuff I did with Abaddon. So I'm kind of going in blind with this paint job and just hoping that it turns out okay. It's definitely an issue that I have, that if I don't record my stuff, I tend to forget how I did it. And with Abaddon, I was so intent on getting him done that I didn't actually record a lot of the process. I was too busy frantically painting him because I was hoping to get him done before a competition to do so. And so while the Abaddon looks really good, I have no recollection of how I painted the lad. Okay. Something I'm already noticing about this Horus paint job is that he's very chalky, especially up here. Now, the good news is I can work with that. I can make that go away. Bad news is it's going to be a minute, as I've got to kind of gently finagle a lot of these parts of his expression. But like, this side is not going to get much brighter than this purpley flesh tone because it's being hit by the light. Everything else, though, is going to need a lot more highlighting. Hopefully, this will read appropriately corpsey. And see, this was another case where sub-assemblies would have helped a lot, because I would have been able to take the face by itself on a little stick and very delicately pushed and pulled with the colors until I got exactly where I wanted it to. But because this is attached to the model, I now have to kind of work within the restrictions of the space I have on the model. And I mean, it's clearly doable because Sergio Calvo did it, and he's an amazing painter, so I really shouldn't be comparing myself to him. But I've been inspired to try and do what he did. So, you know, can't learn anything without taking some risks, right? Now, one thing that is going to be really fun is painting up the sores around these like containment wires, these interface cables that he's got attached to his skull. That's going to be interesting. Something that I'm noticing that is going to be difficult is that his eyelids are visible. This is probably the largest humanoid that I've painted, and most of the time you actually can't see the individual eyelids on these guys, but his are very clear right here. So hopefully, I don't even know if I'm on camera anymore. Okay, cool, I'm still on camera. Hopefully, I will be able to hit some of these spots with my brush and get rid of some of these little red spots that are constantly showing up because I haven't touched them with my brush. I guess the other bit of good news is that it's all just kind of going to look like, you know, the red highlights coming from the light behind him is actually what I'm going for. That. This. And yeah, that's already looking a whole lot better. Again, most of the stuff on the left side of his face, I'm just going to leave in kind of this maroon light because it's already being hit. What's kind of nice, and this was almost accidental, is that because of how I've painted him, he's definitely got sections of his face that look chalky and wasted. Let's actually go back a little bit. We're going to add some of this Galvor back red back into the original red, and I'm going to make a glaze. And if you don't know what a glaze is, it's a very watery, thin layer of paint. And I'm going to use that to kind of create a transition between the corpse color that I've created for his scalp and the red of the light behind him. And hopefully that will allow those two to marry a little bit better instead of having this very clear line of delineation. Because especially in this case, that's not something I want. I want there to be a little bit better separation between the two. And thankfully, because of Pro Acryl's incredibly good pigmentation, there's actually a good chance that I can make this blend happen. Here. And so this is where like the really, really high level painting becomes a thing that I'm kind of starting to brush the surface of, or scrape the surface of, is there's going to be a lot of back and forth as you try and get that perfect transition between one color to the other. Sometimes it's super easy and you get really lucky. Other times it requires a little bit more delicate a touch. And in my case right now, it's requiring a little bit more of a delicate touch. Oh, Stomnia, thank you. How many hours do I have into this so far? That's a really good question. I want to say at least 10 to 15. And this is by far the most ambitious paint job I've done. I have painted some other cool stuff, but because of both the cost of this model and just kind of the prestige of a Horus model, I'm really taking my time with this one and going back and like playing with it, you know what I mean? Versus just kind of going, okay, good enough, and then moving on. So I'm hoping that it's going to show through in the final product, and stuff that otherwise comes through as sloppy or unfinished is all going to look pretty good. But I won't know until I'm almost done with the lad. One thing I did find out with a previous model that I did is that I've gotten really quick and I'm good at cutting corners, but it does end up showing up in the final product sometimes. So like I was telling chat a little while ago, I finished an Abaddon the Despoiler in like 3 days, and I think he ended up being about 10 or 15 hours total, but he was good enough to win 3rd place at a local painting competition that was held during a convention. So clearly I'm pretty decent at this. I'm sorry, my hand is covering the entire dang thing. Clearly I can get pretty good results fairly quickly. That's going to require an angle that is not going to really show up well on the camera, but I'm going to try and get the rest of his nose to. But with this one, I'm really taking my time and hoping that it'll turn out okay. Let's get that tubing. Now, honestly, with this part of him, I've been pretty anxious. Obviously, the face is one of the most important parts of the model, and the last thing I want to do is mess up Horus's face. The modeling crew, the artist who made him, did such a tremendous job giving him like a wrathful expression, and just gave him such a powerful stance that I want to make this model look as perfect as I can. And I really don't want to mess it up. So there's a wee bit of panic riding on this guy. Just getting into 40k myself. Got your paints today and picking up your first little set on Friday. Congratulations. Welcome to the hobby. I'm sorry for your wallet. But I hope that you enjoy it. And I hope that you find an army that just speaks to you and you can really identify with. So what got you into the 40Ks? Like what model, what army are you thinking of picking up? What box you think of getting? What faction? All those words, because I'm tired. There's so many of them, and what's going on? There it is. And so many of them are so good. And while I do enjoy some of the lighthearted ribbing that comes with, you know, liking or disliking a certain faction, I think they're all great choices, you know what I mean? And honestly, if I could, I'd collect them all. But that's a financial investment that I cannot do, and I know for a fact my wife would kill me if I tried to. What's going to happen here, what probably should have happened here, first of all, that's way too wet. I probably should have gone lighter and worked my way down to this color. So I think I might actually change gears and do that. I'm going to mix that purple I was using with some of the bold pyrite red that I have been using, and I'm going to go back over these tubes and these wires so I can have kind of a transition color into these darker ones as they get further and further away from the light. There we go. And so now what will happen when I go back over it is I can kind of keep adding in the brighter color until eventually I get to the color I want. A couple of your friends got you into it. I ended up with Black Templars after watching videos for a couple weeks as far as the lore goes. Black Templars are really cool. I think they're a super neat army. Not one of my favorites, but I think they have a great aesthetic. I think they are so neat. I think they have some of the best miniatures in the Space Marine range, though. I want to buy Helbrecht, and I want to paint Helbrecht, because he is such a cool model. And then, you know, you got like Grimaldus, and you got all those guys, so good choice. And they also just recently got a range refresh, if I recall properly. So you would definitely have a bunch of super neat looking models to choose from that are relatively new. And of course, being an Imperial Fist player, you've got Sigismund as part of your history, so that's obviously very awesome. Add a little bit more black into that. Okay. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm trying to go progressively smaller with the darker colors. And I'm probably going to end up redoing this a lot, because honestly, I'm not liking how it looks right now. It's not really conveying to me that it's getting darker as we move away from the light source on the back of his head. So what I'm probably going to do is when I get off camera on another day is I'm going to go back and repaint it when I can actually get a better angle on it. Because I'm struggling enough. So is the camera, apparently. Good gravy. I'm struggling enough to get, like, a good angle for the camera to see it. And I really don't want to create a problem where you guys can't see it. What I am going to do, I'm going to mix in some of this black with some of this white and get some kind of pale off-white. And I'm going to put it on my thumb and get rid of as much of the moisture as I can. And then I'm going to very delicately try and get his eye. It was either that or Necrons based off of Nemesis Sandrak. Again, awesome choice. The Necrons are very cool. And they also have had a recent model refresh. And a recent lore refresh. They've become a great tragic civilization. And apparently the Twice Dead King series is really good. And of course, if you really want to get into it, oh my gosh, what is it called? The Infinite and the Divine are really good. A really good novel. So you've got a couple of really cool options if you're interested in reading about them at all. That was very difficult, and I can't believe that I got even close to even with those eyes. And I just realized I forgot to do the pummel on his knife. So I'm going to go back to doing that real quick. To do the pummel, I'm just going to take some of this flat brown, I'm going to mix it in over the dog head, and then I'm going to take some bone color, some ivory, and I'm just going to do a quick highlight over that. Can I get back here? I know that's probably in the way of the camera. And so what I'm kind of doing, in case you're curious, Games Workshop kind of trains you to do what's called, or to have a very straightforward style, where you start with like, what are my go-to factions? I'm an Imperial Fist player. I like the Imperial Fists a lot because of how just kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Workman-like they are. They aren't going to be flashy. They aren't going to be, you know, super special in any way. They're just really, really good at the fundamentals. And what that leads to in a world of 40k is they get their ass kicked a lot. And so I enjoy playing the plucky underdog of Space Marines. Because unfortunately, they haven't been good on the tabletop in a long, long time. And, but they have some really cool characters. I think Rogel Dorn is a really awesome Primarch. And I love the Torgaradon mini with the giant FU fist. I like the Tau. Cheese! Yeah, they look like cheese. I also play Death Guard. I didn't originally like Death Guard when I got into the game, but like their grossness kind of grew on me, and now I think they're super cool. I painted a Mortarion a while ago, and I think I did a pretty darn good job with him. What else? I also have Sisters of Battle because I think the super fanatical nun thing is really neat, and I think that they have a really strong visual aesthetic, and I love it. And I've also collected orcs because everyone's favorite second army is orcs. And if they tell you otherwise, they're lying. Because orcs are just like the fun army of 40k. And I feel like I've got one other army that I'm not thinking of. But right now I'm not painting this to play him in a game. I'm painting this because it's a cool model and it's very expensive, and it was a payment for a commission I did, and I just want to have this model. I just want to have him painted up and looking awesome in a display case. Yeah, like right now, I'm really working on trying to get his highlights in on him. I guess I'm gonna have to paint his teeth. Because while he is a Primarch, he's still got teeth. That might be a little too bright. We're gonna mix in some of this and make another glaze and work my way back down. How long have I been painting for? I found out recently while talking to my wife that I actually started in like 2000, or I started 6 years ago in 2018, because that was when my first official model was painted. But I took a 2-year break, and I didn't really get into it until about 2020 when the pandemic hit. I was a school teacher at the time, and so while the kids were working on whatever assignment I had for them, I had a lot of dead time. And I had a friend who was really into Warhammer, and he was like, "Man, you should play Warhammer. You should get into Warhammer." And he finally eventually won me over. And so I got really into the painting aspect of it. The game itself is fine and fun for its own thing, but like the painting really got to me. And so I got really deep into it and trying to get really good at it and following a bunch of people and learning their techniques and all that stuff. And so that's kind of what makes me happy about the hobby. And I also got really into the lore. The same person recommended I read the Horus Heresy, and so I did. I read almost all of it. And so the idea of doing like a Horus Heresy army really entices me. I have no idea how I'm going to get his eyes. I'm going to have to figure something out. So yeah, about earlier this year is where I really finally started feeling very like confident in my painting skills, because I was always pretty decent at it, but like this year is where I really started feeling like, man, I'm getting good at this. That's what I'm gonna say as I mess up his eyes, but no. Now, eyes are going to be the bane of your existence if and when you start like really painting. Make sure you have a good tip on your brush whenever you try and do eyes. And there's all sorts of techniques to do them. I say find one that you're comfortable with and work on that. Thank you. Yeah, I was just telling chat that I placed third in a local competition with a mini that I painted. And while I'm really proud of placing third, I honestly feel like I should have placed first. Hey, Jedward, good to see you. Thank you for the follow. I really appreciate it. My name is Ben Repaints. I'm a small-time painter. I usually stream on Tuesdays, so hopefully I'll be able to see you again. I'm doing my best with this guy. He's very difficult, and I'm really scared about ruining him because he was expensive. I painted a Gilliman for him and printed out a whole bunch of minis for a client/friend, and this one is really kind of doing a lot for me. Okay, so Horus's face, he's not done. Where'd he go? He's not done, so I don't feel super comfortable about. I don't want to finish him just yet, but I'm going to be done for now. I might go back and work on it more later. You just started learning about 40K? Very cool. I love talking about 40K, so if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. I'm in Oklahoma. Supposedly the local game shop near me has a class that the art professor from OU holds to try and help people learn to paint minis. That's awesome. I would take severe advantage of that, because my wife, who was in the chat earlier as Art by QB, she was an art major and is an independent artist, and has taught me a whole lot about art theory, and it's really helped with my painting, because you're using a lot of the same techniques that you would use in more quote-unquote traditional art. So learning those fundamentals, even if you don't master them, they're at least going to help you understand why things are done the way they're done with art. If that makes sense. Yes, she is. Hey, QB, how's it going? I'm glad you're having... I hope you're having fun playing your game. Apparently he's into it. Yeah, I mean, 40K is a really good artistic game to play because there's so much crafting you can do with it. It doesn't just stop with the minis. Honestly, the big thing that I'm excited to get into once I get the confidence is making dioramas with this stuff. I think these models are super neat, and what really makes my imagination go wild is like the promotional art with the pitched battles. And I think that stuff is so cool. And the actual game doesn't really play that way. So creating the scenarios where I get to look at it on like a tabletop is what's really going to get me in there. But yeah, 40K has an incredibly rich lore, and I'm pretty sure you're going to find something you enjoy in it if you're still really new to it. Everyone finds something, and I think that that's one of the neatest pulls of 40K, is that everyone finds something that they think is neat. Okay, I guess I got to do his teeth, but like, okay, come on, stop being fuzzy, cut it out, come on, there we go. Again, scared to do teeth. They have these tiny little sections of them that are always real frightening to do until you actually do them. Oh, no, paint is wet. Something else you're going to learn is that moisture control is a huge part of the painting process because you do not want to have too much moisture on the brush when you're doing precise work, because it'll just leave a big old gloopy puddle, and then you've got to deal with cleaning that up. I think that'll do it. This is where having a magnifier would be really helpful. But yeah, he's not done. He's far from it. His face needs some work, which I will do later. Oh wow, Stomnia, thank you for the subscription. I haven't gotten to see that yet. That's fantastic. Like I said, I stream on Tuesdays from around 7 Eastern to about 9:30ish, 9:45. And anytime, my favorite thing to do is answer questions. Like I said, I was a former teacher, and that really never left me. I love helping people, and I love helping people get better at things they want to learn about. So, if you ever have any questions about painting, about Warhammer, I'll do my best to help you. So I'm excited to do so. And that includes anything. If there's any techniques you want to see, I'm not a master by any means. I'm far from it. But if you want to see any kinds of techniques or learn about different painting styles, especially with like Warhammer, I will do everything I can to like give you a demonstration so you have a live example of what you're looking at. And then you can ask questions or see how it's supposed to work. Because YouTube is great, don't get me wrong, and YouTube has a lot of great resources, but I always feel like since they're working towards clicks and engagement, they kind of have to truncate things in ways that meant I didn't learn it very well. Hey, how does a color theory? That's a great question. You're not my first sub, but you're definitely the first one I saw live. There's a gentleman who lives out in Germany. That was actually my first sub. And unfortunately, I stream at a time that isn't always convenient for them. So they're just happy to see me get supported. Color theory is difficult, and I'm bad at it. Don't pick on me. But yeah, there's a thing called the color wheel. And the color wheel tells you how colors are in relation to each other. And so following the color wheel as a general rule of thumb is good. But it's also not something you adhere to dogmatically because it's not the only part of color. I think that's work. Yes, you are second. You are the second subscriber that I have had, and I appreciate it. Like I said, I'm a very small time streamer. I have like 150 or 160 followers, but that's been gathered over like 2 or 3 years of inconsistent streaming. I had to stop for a little while because of employment-related reasons. Oh my goodness, thank you. Thank you so much.
I've never had anyone gift a sub. I really appreciate that. I wish I had better custom graphics for that stuff. My goal eventually is actually to have what... I don't know if you guys know who Doig and Swift are. They're a pair of artists and goobers that have a 3D overlay that Doig made in Unity to make a game. And my eventual thing is I want to do that, where my guy's 3D and I can run around in it, and any redeems will actually interact with that world. And I'll eventually get there, but that would require me to learn Unity, which I don't have time to do right now. Don't care about that. Thank you for the interactions. Care more about that than the graphics. That's fair. That's absolutely fair. But yeah, like I said, anytime you have any questions about anything technical, or with streaming, I will do my best to answer. Or not streaming, with mini painting, I will do my best to answer it, okay? And that's even without the subscriptions. Okay, so that's something else I forgot to do. On his, he's got some gray parts on like his shins. That is supposed to be non-metallic metal, but unfortunately I didn't go bright enough for a lot of this, so it's not really reading as such. And so non-metallic metal is one of those skills that you kind of get through a lot of painting and a lot of practice, and generally it's unnecessary. Like, you don't need to know how to do non-metallic metal. It's something that painters will do to kind of flex that they know how to do it. And it looks really, really good from a static angle. So like when you're taking pictures of minis, if you get them at the right angle with the non-metallic metal, it's going to look freaking awesome. If you look at them in any other direction, it tends to not look as good. And metallic paints are just as valid, and in some cases more valid, because they can help your miniature pop a lot more than a non-metallic metal paint job. But there are some absolutely amazing painters out there that make non-metallic metal look absolutely amazing. I mentioned him earlier, Flame On Miniatures is really good with his non-metallic metal. If you want to see some actual like good non-metallic metal, you should look him up. I am very much a beginner at a lot of these things, or at the very least just kind of an intermediate. I honestly think the fact that I'm doing this probably says I'm more than a beginner, but it's definitely a cool skill, but not one that's necessary. So I hope none of you ever think that you need to do this stuff to make your minis look good. There's a lot... also, don't let anyone ever bash you because of your paint jobs. You should be proud of them, because painting's hard as shit. And if you get any paint on your minis, then you're already ahead of the game. Okay. My schedule, right now, it's Tuesdays from 7 p.m. Eastern to about 9:30, 10 o'clock Eastern. I have a Discord. This guy will not. Okay, I have a Discord as well, and I tend to announce when I'm streaming on them. Give me a second. That's my server. Invite people. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and post this. It's on the on my Twitch channel, but I'm gonna go ahead and post this here. That's the invite to the Discord server. There's not much that goes on there. It's pretty low activity. Generally, I'll chat with people every now and then, but it's mainly there because when I first started this, someone wanted to show off models, and so they were like, "You should make a Discord so we can all look at models and see paint jobs and whatnot." And I just did it because why not? So yeah, that's why it exists. And now I just kind of use it to record progress and talk about what the next paint job is, or show off if I've got something new that's going to get painted, or when I'm going to stream. So if you'd like to join that Discord, go for it. If you don't want to because you don't need another Discord, that's okay too. No pressure. But yeah, generally I'll post usually about 5-10 minutes before I'm about to stream that I'm going to stream. I'm trying to keep a consistent schedule of Tuesdays, just because I enjoy doing this, and it's really hard to reach people if you're not streaming regularly. So that's kind of what it's there for now, is to keep me honest. Okay. And right now all I'm doing is trying to get a little bit of a highlight done on this little metal apparatus he's got on his wolf hide. Now, something I will say, and this is kind of a personal thing, is make sure your equipment's good.
At the beginning, starting with a synthetic brush is perfectly fine, but they can only really take you so far. If you want to have like amazing brush control, after you've gotten comfortable with the synthetic, I do recommend getting a Kolinsky Sable brush. That's what I'm using. But that's only if you want to go that far with like your mini painting. This brush was about $20, which is about $10 too much, but it's also supposedly one of the best brushes on the market. I earned a hype chest. Oh boy. I'd rather be able to see my text. No, that's okay. That's fine. But yeah, like I said, there shouldn't really be any elitism with the painting. And there should, I mean, this is all about fun, right? We're doing this because we're trying to have fun. So don't let anyone ruin your fun. Enjoy what you're enjoying. What I'm going to enjoy is finally getting some color on these guys. This guy was a Sons of Horus soldier, or potentially a cultist. Oh, I think he was a cultist because he's got the Sons of Horus logo on his face, but he's also attached to Horus's chains on his cloak. So clearly not a super cool dude. Or at least a very dead dude. I love the detail on this. This, by the way, this is not a model that you can buy in a game for or in a store typically. This is a Forge World model. And until recently, Forge World was kind of a secondary maker of Games Workshop specialty sculpts, because Games Workshop is a model company first and a game company second. And their stuff is made generally out of resin instead of plastic, and so it's a lot more. It's more expensive because of the sculpting process and the process of making these. But it's also a lot more, or I think I said expensive. It's also a lot more fragile. So these are meant for people who really know that they want to be in the hobby. And these are really meant for people who are like super engaged. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that as like you can't buy these unless you do that. Just know they're going to be more difficult to assemble. They're going to be more finicky. They're just generally considered like enthusiast models, if you know what I mean. Are there any more skulls for me to do? I accidentally painted his face a really good corpse gray. That worked out nicely. Now that the paint is dried a little, I can do a slightly thicker layer. And so what I'm doing right now, the way Games Workshop kind of trains people to paint, and it's not a bad way, is they start with what's called a mid-tone, and then they recommend that you apply what's called a wash, which is a very thinned down paint that will kind of sink into the crevices and make them very dark. And then they suggest you do what's called a highlight. And if you guys want, in another video or in another stream, I can go ahead and demonstrate that traditional painting style. There's a lot of tutorials for it online, because there's a lot of people that want to help you get good at painting quickly. So you can probably find it by just searching, how to paint a Warhammer mini on YouTube, and you'll find some great videos for that. But the way I'm kind of doing it is a little different. I'm using multi-layer blending, which I don't even know if that's the right name, but what it basically means is I'm starting out with a very dark color to be the shadows and to be the low points, and then I'm working my way up to the highlights. So like, you can kind of see it on his shoulder pad, on his pauldron, that I started with a much darker color, and then I just slowly added brighter and brighter colors on top until I had these lighter highlights. And so no matter how I hold him, you can see that parts of him remain bright, no matter the viewing angle. So that's a big part of what that is. And these are not the only ways to paint. There's a fantastic method called slap chop, which does a really good job of getting stuff painted quickly. I'm not going to try and claim that it's the best way or that it's the way everyone should do it. It's just a way to get really decent detail out of a mini with minimal effort. But to be honest, it's not really going to make you a great painter because it relies on a type of paint that does most of the work for you. But it is a cool thing to teach you about light and dark. So if you ever want to learn slap chop, that is definitely something that we can do. It's in classical painting, it's called the grisaille method because it's based on creating volumes and light and dark with a black and white, and then going over it with a very thin paint. So that way it retains the black, or it retains the bright spots and the dark spots, but still gives you the color that you're looking for. So that is a method you can use. Please. So my stuff isn't drying quickly enough. So what I'm doing right now is using a hair dryer to kind of dry out the acrylic paint. Most paints you're going to use are going to be a water-based acrylic, and that tends to mean that you can literally just dry them out the same way I did, and that will generally do a good enough job of letting you apply another layer. And I'll be honest, I'm getting kind of sloppy with these guys because they're corpse heads that he's got strapped to his cloak, so I'm not super worried about how beautifully detailed these are. I'm kind of slapping on a couple of layers, and then I plan on going back later and really kind of putting a whole lot more detail into the flesh of their decaying heads. And that's exposed bone right there, so that is what that is. I don't even remember how I got this one to be as good as I did. That's kind of another issue you guys might notice I'm going to start having, or that I have, is that I get kind of stream of consciousness, and that means that I go into something of a fugue state and I don't remember anything I'm talking about. Okay, but yeah, this guy is, gosh darn it, this guy is looking pretty darn good. It's almost time for me to go because I have a bedtime. I work relatively early, so I like to get to bed at a decent time. And that time is coming up very soon. I'm going to see if I can finish getting at least one layer of the flesh color over the purple that I've given him. And then I'm probably going to go ahead and call it for the evening, because it is almost 10 o'clock for me. Okay. We're bringing, okay, he's getting fussy. Yeah, that means that it's time for me to go. So actually, that's going to be a good sign for me to go. Something else you're going to want to make sure you're doing a good job with is brush making. Generally, you're going to want to have some kind of rinsing cup. It could be just a mug, it doesn't really matter. But when you're done with it, what I do, since this is a very expensive brush, is I have this this IPA, this alcohol, that I kind of gently agitate the brush in to get any paint particles out of. And then I rinse it again in the water. And then I take what is called brush soap. So this is not something you have to do. It's not bad if you don't. But if you want your brushes to maintain a decent tip, you kind of want to get this. It's like $10 at a craft store. But you just kind of run your brush through the brush soap until you get a lather. And that will loosen paint particles off of your paint, or off of your brush, and that will help your brush maintain a better, tighter tip, which is really good for precision with your paint jobs. Okay, that being said, it is pretty much time for me to go. I really appreciate you guys being here. I appreciate the donations and the everything else. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and see if we can find someone fun to raid. Let's see. Because there's definitely more than just me painting. I know it for a fact. Oh, the Dungeon Lounge is going. Yeah, let's go ahead and raid the Dungeon Lounge. They're really good. They do fun things. So get back. Yep. Go ahead and do that. Thank you again for joining me, guys. I appreciate y'all being here, and I hope you have a good rest of your evening, and you had fun, and I guess I will see you probably next Tuesday. Bye-bye.